Good morning, dear students. Welcome to another session of Introduction to Data Structures and Algorithms. In previous sessions, we started a discussion with respect to algorithms, and we also saw a few of the asymptotic notations, and we solved few problems pertaining to those. And in yesterday's class or session, we had a look at what is a data structure, or what are the data elements called as, that is the data members, what are the examples pertaining to different data structures, then what all operations we can perform on the data structures. There is a manipulation, what is given over here. Then what is the characteristics of a data structure. So these are the things of what we had seen yesterday. And apart from that, what are the different types of data structures, that is primitive and non-primitive. So primitive is your fundamental data structures, that is integer, character, bool. Then you have floating numbers. So those all fall under the primitive data structures. The ones which are built using these primitive data structures fall under the non-primitive. Under non-primitive, what we have is we can have two types, that is linear and non-linear. So linear is the examples are arrays, stack, queues, linked list. So these are few to name around. Then in non-linear, we can have trees, graphs. So these are non-linear data structures. So let us have a look into a few of these in coming fourth session. So yesterday we discussed even regarding what is meant by an array. Then what all things are present with an array, like array name and index. So what can be done using these. Then we discussed regarding linked list. So yesterday also we discussed regarding what is meant by linked list. So just a recap of linked list. It is also a linear data structure, and in this, what happens is you first identify a memory location where you want to store the information. Say the data what you want to store. So that location will be having a memory address. So what is done is, suppose this is one entire stuff. So this is the memory location where the data is stored. So this is the memory location where the data will be stored. And along with that, what is done is you store the address of this information at another point. So here, what we are doing is we are trying to have a linkage between one node and the other node. And what does a node consists of? A node will be consisting of the information, that is the value which you want to store here. And at the next point, you will be having the address of the next data which you will be accessing. So for example, here in array, what I have 2, which is the information. So 2 will be stored here. And what is the next number? It is 6, as it is represented over here. So if I want to store this in linked list, so what I do is I take 2, then 6 is stored in the new memory location. But what is done is this memory location's address is stored in this field. So this node will be having one part which is actually the value or the information, and this one will be a pointer to the next data. So it will be having the address of the next data. So in this way, all these datas will be interlinked. So if you want to do this, generally what happens is we make use of something called as dynamic memory allocation. As and when new data has to be put in, what they do is they first allocate a memory. In that memory, they store the information, and that information what is stored, its address is linked to the previous node. So here, if I just specify, this is a new number. So here you are storing the value, and address of this one is stored in the previous node. Address of this one is stored over here. So this is what linked list does. So all these again will be going in depth, because again we have a separate sessions regarding discussion pertaining to in-depth discussion pertaining to arrays, linked list, queues. So there again we'll be going in depth regarding these aspects. Now, where does linked list is utilized? So linked list can be utilized for stacks, queues, trees. So for all these purposes, we can look forward for making use of the concept of linked list. So this one is called a node. So each one is called a node. A node will be having a value and a pointer which will be pointing to the address of the next data, which is present in the next node. So this is how it goes around. Now next we have stack. So stack, again, it's a linear data structure. Now here again it is a list of elements which in which stacks contain different elements. Now here what is the difference in this case is stack works on last in first out principle. Stack works on last in first out principle. Now another point to note down is if you want to insert or delete an element from a stack, you can do it only from one end. You can do it only from one end, which is actually called as the top of the stack, which is termed as top of the stack. Suppose you have a rack in which you have kept the books. So if I have to keep a new book, what I do is logically I can keep it on top of that book. So that is a stack of books. Now if I have to remove, what I do is I first take the top book, next the next one. So in this way, so I can insert or delete from only one end, which is termed as top of the stack. Now, when I look at the applications of the stack, what happens is in computer systems, you run a program, you compile it, you do so many things. Now, what happens is in previous this thing we had discussed, wherein we discussed regarding functions. Suppose you have a main function, and in main function you are calling another function f1. So what happens is f1 will be having its own address. F1 will be having its own address. So now what is done in this case is whenever the statement is executed in the main function, the control has to go to function f1. Once the function has completed its work, it should return back to the next statement which is present after f1. So now how does the system know where to return and what to do? So what it does is whenever you make a function call, so I'm just taking an example in this case, whenever you make a function call, what happens is next instruction's address is stored in the stack. It is stored in the stack. So once the execution is completed, it goes back to the stack and it takes that address and gives the control to the program controller and to execute the next line after F1. So in such cases, you require the utilization of stacks. So basically you're trying to control the program execution. If you're making a function call, so there you need to control it. So these are just a few things to add on to the stacks. So this is the logical representation of a stack in which, say, you start from this end. If you want to add an element, you add it on top of the stack. So in this case, what they have done is they have added few of the elements. The last element which was to be entered was 16. Now if I want to add another element, you have to add on top of this. So here you will be adding an element x over here. So now what happens is this will not be the top of the stack. When you add this element, this becomes the top of the stack. So next, again, if you want, again, if you have to add a number, so again, what you do is you put it on top of this one. So again, the pointer will be moved to this location. Now, if I want to delete the number, it works on the principle last in, first out. It works on the principle last in, first out. So in this case, the last element which was present on the stack was y. So now when I do, we call it as push and pop operations. So when I want to remove this or delete, so what I do is I remove the last element which was inserted. I cannot remove any in between element. The principle is last in, first out. So this will be removed and this top pointer will be pointing to this one. Since this is removed, this becomes the top element. That is top of the stack. If this is also removed, this becomes the top of the stack. So this is how the stack looks like. Now next, coming down to queues. So slight changed version of stack you can specify. So again, this is a linear data structure. It contains a list of the elements. Now in this case, what is the difference is you can insert elements from one end and you can delete elements from the other end. And the principle on which it works is first in, first out. So it is like the queue of the people who are standing to purchase something or who are standing in a mart. So you can just consider those things. So in that, the first person who is there present in the queue will be the first person to get the chance to move out of the queue. So that is how it goes around. So in this case, the end from where you are inserting the element is termed as the rear end, and the end from where you will be deleting the elements is called the front end. Suppose there is a queue, there is one person standing here, then next person here, third person here. So this queue goes on building. So what happens is it is operating on the first in, first out. So the persons who are coming in will be added at the end of the queue, will be added at the end of the queue, which is actually the rear end of the queue. So persons will be added at the rear end of the queue. And if a person has to move out of the queue, then as per rule, you have to follow the first in, first out. That is, from the front end, you move out. So when this person goes out, he becomes the top of the queue. So this person moves out. So he is a front person which is present in the queue. So this is how it goes around. So in logical representation which is present in the memory, what you can do is, so this is the first element which is present in the queue. Next element is here, third is here, fourth, fifth. So this is the fifth, and it continues. If any new element has to be added, it will be added at this point. Now if any element has to be deleted, that has to be deleted from the front end. If I have to add or insert any elements, I'll be adding using the rear end. And if I have to delete an element, I'll be deleting referring to the front end, because I have to maintain the principle of first in, first out. Now again, when we look out where it can be useful, it can be useful in cases where you want to schedule the CPU, or you want to have a resource sharing. So these are just a few things to name around where queues will be applicable. So next comes the trees. So again, this is also a linked data structure in which you will be having the linkage between the elements, but how the elements are linked as compared to the previous. In this case, they'll be arranged in the form of a tree. They'll be arranged in the form of a tree. So as a tree has roots, even in this linked data structure, which is trees, it will be having a node which is called as a root node, which is called as the root node. So it is the top node which is present in the tree. So if I observe this will be the top element which is present in this hierarchical structure. So this is called the root node. This is called the root node. Similarly, what we can have is, if I consider any node which is present in this. So if I consider, say, B over here, B is a node, D is a node, E is a node. So if I consider any node can have either zero child nodes, or it can have more than zero child nodes. So for a root node, you can observe that we are having B and C. So here B and C are the childs of A. So therefore we term it as child node of A. These two are the child nodes of A. Now here, if I just observe for C, I am not having any further branching. I'm not having any further branching. So for C node, what is happening? I don't have any child nodes. There are zero child nodes for this one. Whereas for B, if you just observe what I am having, I am having two nodes, that is D and E. So D and E are child nodes of B. Now, if I still want to add further, I can have zero or more childs to D. Now in this case, I am not having. So if the tree ends over here, this last set which is there, so D, E, C, these are actually called as leaf nodes, which are present at the end of the branch, which do not have any child nodes, So in trees, what we have nodes which are basically arranged in hierarchical structure, and each node can have a zero or more child. Example of zero childs is D, E, C, and examples of more than zero childs is for B and A nodes. And root node is the top of the hierarchical structure. So that is, in this case, it is A. And the child nodes which do not have any further branching, we classify them as the leaf nodes. Now, what is the application of the trees? If you want to store the information in hierarchical form, you can go for the tree data structure. Now, another important thing of trees is we look for the binary search trees, which we in short term as BST. So for searching and sorting, we can make use of trees. So when we go in further sessions, right, there we'll be discussing regarding these concepts again, as to how the searching can be improved, how we can look out for sorting of the data. So there are some concepts on which we have to work out, like how do I obtain a few of the aspects: post order, in order, pre order. So these all things we'll be discussing. So this is pertaining to trees. Now, last one, what we have is in this part is graphs. Now, graph is again a linked data structure. Again, what we have nodes which are present in this. Nodes are nothing but the vertices, what we call in graphs. Nodes represent the vertices. And edges are nothing but the connecting bridge between two nodes. So here, if you just observe, this is a edge. An edge is a connection between the two nodes. In this case, what I'm representing is between B and D. B and D are the nodes, and the interconnecting part is the edge. So edges is the pair of vertices. We specify that these two together form the edges. It is nothing but the linkage what we are having. This linkage what we are having, it is the edges. Now, each edge is actually associated with something called as weight. Now, this is actually something referring to a cost element. Now, if you're dealing with the networking, right, you'll come across this term. So in computer networks, right, if two systems are connected, what is the cost of, say, communicating between the two? It might be in the sense of, say, how much time is required to send data from one node to the other node, say one system to the other system. That might be the weight. How much amount of, say, cost is involved, say, in terms of amount, in order to make connection between the two nodes. So even that also can incorporate as a weight. So this is just an example over here. So here we have nodes which are actually called the vertices. The interconnecting parameter between the vertices, that is a pair of vertices, is called the edge, and each edge will be associated with a term which is called as the weight, which is the value associated with respect to that edge. Now, where it is utilized is in computer networks. Generally, what happens is you need to identify, say, for example, the shortest path between two nodes. Suppose this is one system, which is a node which is represented, and this is another system. Now, I want to communicate between A and D. So I put on the condition that the cost has to be minimum, or the weight has to be minimum. So if I traverse from, so for example, if I traverse from A to B, the cost is 2. And if I move from B to D, the cost is 8. So total cost is what? 8 plus 2, which is 10. Now, is there any path through which I can reach D, which is less than 10? So if I move from A to C, it is 1. And from C to D, it is 4. So 4 plus 1 is 5. So this is still lesser. So there is another path possible from A to C, C to B, and B to D. But what is the cost? 8, 10, 11. The cost is 11. The lowest is from A, C, and D. So in such conditions, right, we can make use of the graphs. We can make use of the graphs. So basically that is what modeling of the network system implies. So and these can be used to represent how the overall network is, whether it is a mesh kind of network, whether it is in star form, or whether it is in some tree form or any other form. So that we can identify using the graphs. So this is the application of the graphs. So now what are the operations which we can perform on the data structures what we have discussed? So it is named around here. We can traverse through a data structure. That is, if I want to access particular record in the data structure, I can traverse through the data structure and see whether that is present or not, or I can access that information. Say I want the information of a student whose roll number is 1. So I can try, if that data structure is available with me, I can traverse through that and obtain all the information pertaining to that student. Then all the records I can access. Then if I want to see whether a particular say element is present or not in the record, say I want to identify whether some USN, say some USN which is there, it is present or not, his records are there or not, whether that student is there or not, then I can go and search in the data structure. Now if some new information has to be added to the data structures, I can do it by inserting that element or the node into that. Then if I want to remove the data from the data structures, I can do that by deleting it. Then if I want to arrange the entire stuff, say I want to arrange the as per ascending order or descending order, so I can do that. Now, if I want to combine two data records or two data elements in the data structures, I can perform that. So these are few operations on which we can perform the we can perform on the data structure. Now, how do I look ahead with the efficiency of the different data structures? I basically make use of the omega, big O notation. So previously, if you just recollect, so big O notation, what we had solved. So here, if you just observe what is f of n, f of n is 8 times n plus 7, and g of n is n. So here we observed that f of n is actually big O notation of g of n. So if you just observe f of n is actually a linear equation. That is, it is having n is having the power of 1. It's a linear equation. So in this case, what is happening is I am having a complexity of ON. Now, if it was a constant, so if this was say some constant and I had to identify the big O notation. So in that case, if that would satisfy, then I would represent the complexity as O of 1. So this is just a few examples to name around. So here we can observe the different efficiency factors pertaining to the different data structures. With respect to insertion, what is the case? With respect to search, what is the case? With respect to delete, what is the case? So here this entire table gives that information. So this is from general concept point of view in which we discussed regarding all these aspects. Now what we'll do is we'll go ahead with the next part in which we'll be discussing the concepts pertaining to arrays. Okay, next we'll be discussing concepts pertaining to arrays. So in previous session already we have gone through what is actually arrays, how it is represented, that is in the first module itself. So now just it will be a kind of recap, and in that we'll be going in depth regarding few of the things like how do we traverse through an array, how do we insert an element, how do we delete an element. So those are the things what we'll be looking forward. An array is nothing but a user-defined data type, which is actually a collection of different data types together. It's a collection of it's a collection of data types which are of similar kind. It's a collection of data types which is of similar kind. The only problem with arrays is I cannot store elements which are of different type under the array. I cannot store data elements which are of different type. Only similar kind of data types can be stored in an array. Then apart from that, another one thing to note down is array will be consuming a continuous memory location. So if I allocate some five memory locations to this one, so this five memory locations will be contiguous in nature. That is, the memory locations will be continuous. So first element has to be stored at the first memory location, second over here, third over here, and so on. Now here once I declare the array, right, I'm doing it in a static form. So I have to declare what is the size of the array initially. So I cannot do it during the runtime. I cannot do it during the runtime. If I'm able to perform that, we classify it as dynamic memory allocation. So in arrays, what we have, it is first of all user defined function. I can store only the similar kind of data types. I cannot store data types which are different. And memory what is allocated to our array will be contiguous in nature. That is, it will be in continuous memory location. And once if you have allocated the memory, that memory will be utilized by that array whatever you have declared. So it will be utilized by that. So in some cases, what happens is this leads to efficiency problem. So if you are allocating say 50 memory locations, and in that only 5 elements are stored, so remaining 45 locations are wasted. So you are not efficiently utilizing the memory over there. So these are the different things what we'll be looking forward. Here what we have is the characteristics. What are the different characteristics of the array? Now, as mentioned previously, an array will be having a name. So that name I can use for accessing or referencing the elements which are present in the array. So I can use the name, but along with name, I also require at what location it is present. So I cannot remember the address every time. So what we do is, along with name, I can make use of index. So array name and index. So it is like ARR is the name and index is 1. So here basically what I am doing is I am accessing the element which is present at the index value 1. So next what we have, since each element which is present in the array will be having a memory location, and one of the characteristics associated with this one is the memory locations will be contiguous in nature. That is, elements are stored in consecutive memory locations. And now since we can make use of the name of the array, it is nothing but it is acting like a pointer. It is acting like a pointer to all the elements which are present in the array. So therefore, name of the array can be used as a pointer, since I am utilizing this to access the element which is present at index 1. So this is basically acting as a pointer over here. Now, size always remains constant. So what does this imply? Now, if I declare an array, and if I say 2, and if it is of integer, now here what happens is, if I assume that 2 bytes of memory location is consumed by a integer. So since I am having the array which is of size 2, here this array which is named as ARR, its size will always be 4 bytes. Whenever I use the size of operator on this array, it will be always giving me 4 bytes. So this is what size of the array remains constant. That is what it specifies. Now, apart from this, what happens is there is no bound checking which is happening within the array. So suppose, for example, when you're executing the programs, right, you might have observed that if you're pushing some elements, so after some limit, it'll tell that there is a stack overflow. You might have come across this term, stack overflow. So what is this indicating? It is indicating that the stack is full and you cannot put in any more elements in this. So such kind of check I cannot have in this. If you want to have it, then you have to implement it in a logical form. You have to implement it. So here it does not perform the bound checking in its own. So if the array consists of two this thing, now accidentally you are trying to perform some other operation, and in that case what happens is you are out of bound. So such kind of bond checking won't be there. But in program it will throw an error if you're trying to insert an element at the next, because there are only two indexes which are present. So basically you don't have any bond checking in the arrays. So this one has to be done through program itself, that is bond checking. So next we have different types of arrays. We can have a single dimensional array or one dimensional array and multi-dimensional array. So here as we have in single dimensional, we'll be having only one index. So we'll be having a name of the array and we'll be having only one index, which will be identifying at what position the element is present. So here if I just observe, so if a number is stored over here, if two numbers are stored, so if this is the array, so here I can have only two elements. So in order to access these two elements, I require just one index, that is which is either 0 or 1. So if it is 3, so here another this thing. So if I keep on continuing also in say a single row, in single row I have all the elements present, so therefore I require just one index to access this. Now what about multidimensional? Say in this case what happens is you require more than one index to access a element. In this case in a single dimension, what you're having, you require just one index element to access a element. But in multidimensional, what happens is you require more than one index depending on what dimensionality it is. There are more than one index to access any given element in the array. So if it is in simple, if it is two dimension, so which is nothing but a matrix if you just specify. If it is two dimension, so I have some numbers stored over here. Now if I want to access this number, so I have to specify in which column and which row it is. So here I require two index values, one to identify the row, one to identify the column. So similarly, if I want to access this element, so it is in which row? It is in 0th row and it is in first column. So as per the index values, 0th row, first column. So in that I'll be having element 3. So here I require more than one index to access the element which is present in the multi-dimensional array. So in this case, we have just represented it as two dimension. That is, we have represented it as two dimension. So here even we can store a group of strings together. So this is nothing but array of strings. This is an array of strings. So in this case, this is one row, this is another row, this is another row, this is another row. So this is the different types of arrays which are present. Now let us look at how do we represent a one-dimensional array. So here, let us assume that we have an array which is named as ARR and it can store around 5 elements in it. Now, as per this one, these are the elements which are present in the array. Now, what is the index of the first element? Index of the first element in the array is always 0. The next element follows. This will be 1, this will be 2, this will be 3, this will be 4. So these are the indexes of the respective elements. And if you just find the total, there are, in this case, there are 5 elements which are present in the array, which is named as ARR. So this is one dimensional. So this is how it will be present in the memory. Now, as we specified, array will be having a name, so which is ARR in this case, and each element can be accessed with a particular index value. So here 0 is the index of element 2, that is this element. Then if I consider, say, the last element, 4 is the index which gives me the value of 8, which is stored in the array. Now, what is since this is an array, what happens is, one of the characteristics is the memory location where it is stored, that is the address pertaining to that. They will be stored in continuous memory locations. Now here, if I assume that the first address of the element, that is the first the element of this first the element has an address of 6000. The first element has a address of 6000. So then the next element will have, say, 6002, assuming that integer is consuming 2 bytes of memory location. So again, 6 is consuming 2 bytes of memory location. So the next, this thing will be having a address of 6004. So next one, 6006, 6008. So on, it can continue depending on the size of the data what you are storing and what is the array size. Now, now in this case, suppose I know the base address. Suppose I know the base address. So base address is nothing but the address of the first element in the array. So that is, this is the first element of the array. The address of this one will be giving you the base address of this entire array, which is named as ARR. Okay. So it is ARR, and there are 5 elements in this. So in this case, I know the base address. So in this case, it is, say, 6000, and I want to know what is the address of the element which is present at index 3. At index 3. So I can estimate it directly with the equation which is given over here. So as per discussion, what I want to know what is the address of the element which is present, which is having the index of 3. So that is ARR of 3. So this is identifying the element which is present at that location, which is this one. So I want to know what is the address of this. So base address is 6000. Base address is 6000 plus what is the amount of size, or what is the size of the integer data. In this case, since I'm storing the integer, I'll just refer it to as the integer data. So if it was float, it will consume, say, around 4 bytes. If it was double, it would consume around 8 bytes. So this in previous this thing we had discussed, that is previous sessions. So how do I access it? I add the base address with the product of the word size and the index. The product of word size and the index. So in this case, the base address is 6000. So here we can just observe base address is 6000. And in this case, what I was considering, I considered that the word size of integer is 2 bytes. And what is the index of this one? Index of this one is 3. So when I estimate it, what I'm getting 6006. So 6006 is nothing but the address of the element which is present at index 3. Now similarly, address of element which is present at index 2 is obtained as this form. That is, base address is 6000 plus word size is, for the integers, is 2 bytes, and 2 is the index. 2 is the index. So when I estimate, it is 6004, which is the address of the element which is present at index 2. So next we'll have a look at how do we traverse through an array. So what is basically traversal lookout? We are trying to access the elements which are present in the array. So we are reading what all things will be required. We need to read the values which are present in the array, then visit each of the elements and sort or retrieve the values from it. So these are the things. First, we need to read the values or the elements which are present in the array, visit each of the element and sort or retrieve the values what you are traversing. So you are basically just traversing through the array. Read all the values, visit each of the elements and retrieve the values which you are looking out for. So now where all you can look out for this cases, we can look out for printing array elements. So now I just want to print what is present in the array. So in that case, I have to just traverse through the array and just use the print command or the print instruction. So if you want to search for elements, you have to traverse through the array. If you want to sort the elements, again, you have to traverse through the array. So it is for these purposes, you require the logical aspect of traversal through an array. So if you want to print the elements of the array, you have to traverse through the array. If you want to search any element in the array, you have to traverse through it. If you want to arrange or sort the array elements, you have to traverse through the array. Then only you will be able to sort it. So here we have a program pertaining to the array in which what is given, C program to traverse each element of an array and print its value. So for this case, what we can do is we can have a look over here. So here we have, it is the same program which is given over here. Now just slight changes will be there depending on the editor which you are using. So in C editor, right, generally the main function is void, but in some cases you can just print it as int, that is it will be returning an integer value. In the return statement, you can just add that. So here, let us look at this one. Okay, so here I have to change it. So in this case, void doesn't work. So you have to change it accordingly. Okay. I think in Atom, clear screen is also not working. So in this program, what they have given is it is directly printing the elements which are present. So here, what we are doing is, if you just observe over here, so here we have included the header files which are required. Then this is a function prototype to traverse. So they are making use of the function. So now here, what are the parameters they are passing to the function? They are passing int star. So this indicates that this parameter is actually a pointer. This parameter will be a pointer and this one will be just an integer. So we sometimes call it as pass by reference. If you know this, if you pass the address, right, you are telling it as pass by reference. But if you're just passing the value, it is specified as pass by value. So this is the function prototype what they have declared. So what it is telling, this traverse function is not returning anything, but it is accepting two parameters in which one parameter is associated with holding the address, that is the pointer, and one will be holding a value. So that is what is present. Next in next this thing, they have declared an array which whose name is ARR, and it is storing around 5 elements, and it will be storing data of the type int. So here, these are the 5 elements which are being stored. It is 2, 6, 7, 3, and 8. So since it is one dimensional array, they'll be stored in consecutive memory locations. If address of this one is 6000, so what is the address of next, you can identify. Now here, for just simplicity purpose, what I had done was I had just taken an string array. So it is just an additional thing what I have done. So don't worry about this. So next, we have declared an int where n is equal to 5. So it is just an indication that n is 5 over here. That is, I am having 5 elements in the array. It will be used for that purpose. So next, what we are printing the element. We are printing the address of the say address of the elements. So here, address of the element, say ARR of 0. That is the address of 2. You're printing the address of 2, which is identified by the %u. So this is utilized when you want to print the address. So similarly, ARR of 1 also, you just try to print and see what is the value. So in order to print the address of this location, I should specify ampersand. So address of ARR of 0. So will be printed at this location. Similarly, address of ARR of 1 will be printed at this location. So let us see whether the 2 bytes concept holds or not. Okay, don't worry about the next one, what this print statement. At present, just keep it pending. So next, you are waiting for a character to be entered from the screen. It is used to hold the screen hold the screen, because if you don't use it, what happens is it will execute and come back. So it is just for that purpose you are using a getch function over here. So next, you call the function. This is a function call. So here you have defined the prototype. So in this, what you have to do, you have to pass a address and you have to pass a value. So here you call the function. ARR is the name of the array. So this name itself acts as a pointer. So arrays, one of the major features is directly if you use the name, it is nothing but it refers to the pointer. If you do some changes using that pointer, it will be reflected even in the function which has sent it. So here ARR is actually the address of this entire array, and n is nothing but you are sending how many elements are present in this. So now, once you call this function, what happens is the control goes to the function what you have defined over here. So what you have void traverse, and what was the parameter? It was int star. So this should be a pointer, since you are passing the address of the array. No need of using ampersand over here. If you want to pass address of this one, then in that case, then you have to put an ampersand over here. So when you're using arrays as strings, that is one major change what you can observe in C programming. So here this passes the address. So it will be int star array, and here you are specifying what is the size of the array. So what this does is n value will be stored in this parameter, that is identifier size, and address of ARR will be stored in this identifier which is named as array. So next we have declared int I, which is just an index in order to traverse through the program. Now in order to traverse, what we are doing, we are making use of the for loop. So in for loop, what is the thing? First you have to initialize, then you should put the condition. Based on the condition, the statements will be executed. Once the statement is executed, you either go for increment or decrement operation dependingly, and then again you check the condition. If condition is satisfied, you continue with this operation. So remember, initialization in the for loop happens only once. So here for I is equal to 1, I is equal to 0, whether 0 is less than the array size what is specified. So in this case, remember, array size is 5. So 0 is less than 5, condition is satisfied. So what it does, it goes and prints the element. So ARR %d is, that is this %d will be printed as the index, and this one %d will be printing the element which is present at that index. And you are waiting, you are completing this task. So since if you just observe, there is no parenthesis, so what this implies, printf is the only statement which is present under this for loop. It is the only statement which is present in the for loop. So I just put a tab spacing over there. So this is the only element which is present over there. So here, what happens is, first element will be printed, which will be having index 0. It then the loop goes to increment operator, so it will be incremented by 1, which will be equal to 0 plus 1, which will be 1. 1 is less than 5. So again, it executes second element with the index 0 is index 1 is printed. So this continues till this condition is satisfied, and then you come out of the function and you return and you wait and finish the main function. So if I just execute this program, what I'm getting, so you can see that you are getting address of integer. So that is the first print statement. So what we had referred, AR of 0 is 6487552. Now the address of the next element is 6487556. So for the system what I am using, right, integer consumes around 4 bytes. Integer consumes around 4 bytes. Okay. So next, when I press the enter, because of the get ch function present in the main this thing, right, it was waiting, the cursor was waiting over here. So here you can observe that you have get ch function here. So this part was printed and it was waiting, the cursor was waiting to for you to press any of the key. So once any of the key was functioned, it called this function and it printed all these. So then here you can see that it is printing ARR, it is printing ARR of 0 as 2, the first the index element 1 as 6, 7, 3 and 8. So this is how you traverse through the array. Okay. So we'll stop here and we'll continue in the next session. Okay. Thank you.